the name she forgot. There is a forest that does not appear on any map. Not because no one has tried to draw it, but because every cartographer who ventured into its boundary came back with ink-stained fingers and no memory of what they had seen. They would sit at their desks, quills trembling, and produce only spirals, page after page of spirals, until their hands gave out. The forest did not want to be known. The village of Ashenwell sat at the edge of this forest, close enough that on still nights its residents could hear something that sounded almost like singing, but not quite. The notes were arranged in the right order for music, yet carried the wrong feeling entirely, like a lullaby written for a creature that did not sleep. Most people in Ashenwell had learned to close their windows at dusk. Maren had not. She was the miller's daughter, though she had never much cared for milling, or for her father's insistence that she learn it. She was 17 and restless in the particular way of people who feel they have been placed in the wrong life. Not unhappy exactly, but perpetually aware of some invisible seam in the world that others could not see. She heard the knot singing every night. She had heard it since she was a child, and she was the only one who thought it was beautiful. The trouble began in the autumn, when the miller fell ill with something no healer in Ashenwell could name. His skin took on the gray-green pallor of old copper. He stopped speaking in full sentences. He would look at Maren sometimes with an expression she could not interpret, somewhere between recognition and terror, and say only, "Don't follow the light, girl, don't follow it." He had never been a superstitious man. He had always mocked those who left bread on their windowsills for the fae, who turned their coats inside out before passing the tree line, who spit 3 times at the sound of bells after dark. Maren watched her father deteriorate and thought, "He has seen something." And then with a chill she could not fully explain, "He has seen something that recognized him first." She began asking questions. Old Bress, who kept the tavern and claimed to be 87, though no one had ever verified this, told her that the forest had a name among the elder folk. Not a word exactly, but a sound made by breathing out through the nose while pressing the tongue flat against the teeth. She tried it. He looked alarmed and made her stop. "You don't say it inside," he told her, wiping the bar with a cloth that had not been clean in decades. "You don't say it at all, if you've got sense." Maren had sense. She simply valued other things more. She found the oldest book in Ashenwell's small lending library, a crumbling collection of what the librarian called regional miscellanea, and read everything it contained about the forest, which was not much, and what there was contradicted itself constantly. One passage called the forest a wound in the world where something old had torn through from the other side. Another called it a garden, tended by beings who had been here before the first human word was spoken. A third, written in a different and shakier hand in the margins, said only, "They are not evil, they are not good, they are interested. That is far worse." She read that last line 3 times. Her father worsened through October. By the first frost he could no longer leave his bed. The healer, a practical woman named Sable who trusted herbs over speculation, told Maren quietly that she did not know what was wrong with him, and that not knowing frightened her more than any illness she recognized. "Has he been to the forest?" Sable asked. Maren said she didn't know. She was lying. She had found mud on his boots, the specific blue-gray clay that existed, as far as she knew, only at the forest's edge, 3 weeks before he first fell ill. She had not told anyone. She wasn't sure why. Some part of her had already decided she would go herself. She prepared carefully. She was not reckless. She was deliberate, which is a different thing, though it often leads to the same places. She brought iron as the old stories advised. A knife with an iron blade, a ring of iron wire braided into her hair. She wore her coat inside out, seams facing the world, the way the superstitious villagers had always done before crossing the tree line. She thought this was probably nonsense. She did it anyway. She brought a lantern, a compass, and 3 days' worth of food. Not because she planned to stay 3 days, but because her grandmother had once told her that the prepared traveler offends fate less than the careless one. She left at dusk, when the not singing started. The forest opened for her. That was how it felt. Not like she walked into it, but like it stepped back to make room. The trees were older than she had imagined from the edge, their trunks wider than the mill, their bark the color of dried blood in the lantern light. The canopy closed overhead almost immediately, blocking the last of the evening sky. And yet she could see. Not by her lantern, which she realized after a few minutes had gone out without her noticing. She could see by something else, a diffuse blue-silver luminescence that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, as though the air itself had learned to glow. She walked. The compass spun uselessly. She had expected this. What she had not expected was the silence. She had thought the not singing would be louder inside the forest. Instead, there was nothing. A silence so complete, it had texture, like velvet, pressed against the ears. Her own footsteps sounded muffled and far away, as though she were hearing them from the bottom of a deep well. She had the sudden, vivid feeling that something was listening very carefully to her. The first Fae she saw, she almost missed. It was sitting in the fork of a great oak, watching her with eyes the color of still water at night. It was roughly the shape of a person. Roughly, the way a shadow is roughly the shape of the thing that casts it. Its proportions were slightly wrong, in ways she couldn't quite identify. Limbs perhaps a fraction too long, the angle of the neck a degree or two beyond comfort. It did not move, it only watched. "I'm looking for what happened to my father," Maren said, because silence felt dangerous and speech felt like the only tool she had. The creature smiled. It had too many teeth, but they were all the right shape. "We know what you are looking for," it said. Its voice was layered. She could hear at least 3 registers speaking simultaneously, like a chord played on an instrument that didn't exist. "We have been watching you look for it for some time." "You've been watching me?" "We watch everyone at the edge," it said, "but most do not hear the music. You have always heard it." "What does that mean?" It unfolded from the tree in a single fluid motion that bypassed several steps she would have considered necessary, and stood before her on the path. Up close, its eyes were not just the color of dark water. They moved slowly, like water responding to a current she couldn't feel. "It means you are not entirely what you believe yourself to be," it said. "Your father knew this. That is why he came to us." A coldness spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the night air. "He came to you willingly?" "He came to ask a question," the creature said. "Asking questions here always has a cost. He understood this when he asked. He paid what was asked of him." "What was the question?" The Fae tilted its head at an angle that would have been painful for anything built the way she was built. "He asked what you were," it said simply, "and we told him." The silence after those words was different from the velvet silence of the forest. This silence had edges. "Tell me," she said. "That," said the creature, "is a different question, with a different cost." She did not hesitate. "Name it." What followed was not a negotiation in any sense she had vocabulary for. The Fae did not bargain with goods or services or promises. It bargained with pieces of self, and the self it was interested in was hers. It wanted her name. Not what people called her. Not Maren, the miller's daughter, the girl who left her windows open. It wanted the name beneath that. The name that, it explained in its layered voice, had been with her before she was born into this body, this village, this life. The name she had carried across whatever boundary she had crossed to get here. She hadn't known she had such a name. "If I give it to you," she said carefully, "what happens?" "You will not remember it," said the Fae. "You will remain who you are now, Maren, the miller's daughter, but you will no longer know what you were before." "And if I keep it?" The creature's water-dark eyes moved slowly. "Then eventually you will remember it yourself. And when you do, you will no longer be able to remain what you are now." It paused. "Your father understood this. That is why he came to ask. He wanted to know if there was time." "Is there?" "Less than there was," said the Fae. "More than you fear." She stood in the blue-silver light of a forest that did not want to be mapped, and she felt the seam in the world, the one she had always been aware of, the invisible stitch between what she was and what she was supposed to be. Pull taut. She thought about her father in his bed, the gray-green pallor, the terror in his eyes when he looked at her. She thought about the way he had said, "Don't follow the light, girl." Not a warning against the forest, a warning against herself. She thought about the cartographers and their spirals, about the note in the old book's margin. They are interested. That is far worse. She gave the Fae her name. She felt it leave her like breath on a cold morning, visible for just a moment, real and discreet, and then gone. There was no pain. There was something that might have been relief, or might have been loss, or might have been both things occupying the same space at the same time. The Fae closed its fingers around the air where the name had been. "Your father's illness," it said, "will ease now. What he paid is satisfied." "What did he pay?" she asked. "His certainty," said the Fae. "He was a man who believed he understood the shape of the world. He no longer has that belief. It cannot be returned. But he will recover." She thought about her father mocking the superstitious villagers, thought about him coming here, this careful, practical man, and asking what she was. Thought about what it must have cost him to believe the answer. She loved him, she realized, more than she had known. "Can I ask one more thing?" she said. The Fae waited. "The name you took from me," she said. "Is it a Fae name?" The creature regarded her for a long moment. The current in its eyes moved differently now. Slower, or perhaps more purposeful. "It is older than Fae," it said, finally. "We do not know what it is. We only know that it exists, and that you carried it, and that there are others like you who carry such names, walking in human form, hearing things humans do not hear, feeling seams in the world that others cannot find." "What are we?" "That," said the Fae, "is a question even we cannot answer." It turned and walked back toward the oak, folding itself into the fork of the tree with the same impossible fluid ease, and then it was simply not there anymore. Not vanished, exactly, but unpresent in the way that a thought is unpresent once you have stopped thinking it. Maren stood alone in the blue-silver forest. After a while, she could not have said how long, she turned and walked back toward the tree line. The forest, as before, seemed to step aside for her. The silence thinned. Her lantern, inexplicably, was lit again. She emerged at the forest's edge as the first gray light of dawn was beginning to soften the eastern sky. She looked back once. The trees stood still and dark and enormous. Nothing moved within them. She walked home. Her father was sitting up in bed when she arrived. Color returned to his face, his eyes clear for the first time in weeks. He looked at her the way he always had, with the uncomplicated love of a man who believed he knew his daughter completely. She wondered what certainty he had lost. She wondered if he had built a new one to replace it, or if he was simply learning to live without. She did not tell him where she had been. She closed the window that night, for the first time she could remember, and lay in the dark and waited for the not singing. It came, as always, at dusk. It drifted through the glass like light through water. She listened to it for a long time. She could not remember why it had ever felt beautiful. Weeks passed. Her father recovered fully, or as fully as a man can recover when something foundational has been removed from him. He was quieter than he had been, more careful with his words, more willing to leave certain questions unasked. She thought, sometimes, that this was not the worst thing that could happen to a person. She returned to her life at the mill. She learned the things her father had wanted to teach her. She found she did not mind it as much as she had before. The weight of sacks, the smell of ground grain, the reliable turning of the wheel. There was comfort in machinery that did exactly what it was built to do. She no longer felt the seam. She no longer heard the not singing as music. She no longer stood at her window at dusk and felt the particular ache of something half-remembered. She was by every measure more at peace. And yet, 3 months after she had returned from the forest, she found a marking on the inside of her left wrist that she had no memory of acquiring. It was not a scar and not a tattoo. It was something that might have been called a watermark, if watermarks existed in skin. A faint spiral, barely visible unless the light hit it just right. She stared at it for a long time. She did not know what it meant. She did not know where it had come from. She did not feel alarmed by it, which perhaps should have alarmed her more than anything else. She pulled her sleeve down and went back to work. She did not look it up. But she remembered for just a moment the cartographers and their spirals, page after page of them, hands that could not stop drawing the same shape. And something in the back of her mind turned over slowly, like a wheel finding its groove, like a word rising through deep water toward the surface. She pushed it back down. She was Maren, the miller's daughter. She knew the shape of her world. She was almost certain of it. That's where we leave her, at the edge of knowing, with a mark she doesn't question and a song she no longer hears. But the forest is still there. It has always been there. And the Fae, if you ask them, which you shouldn't, will tell you that giving up a name only delays the remembering. It does not end it. The name always comes back. It just comes back changed. Thank you for listening to Ambient Zenith. If this story found you, perhaps it was meant to. Leave a comment, follow the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.